Hi, Haunted Family, and welcome back. I know I took a brief break over the holiday season, but hey, things happen. I'm back now, and I've got a collection of really fun stories for you, so sit back and enjoy the show. Story 1. The Little People. My girlfriend and her 7-year-old had just moved in to a modular home on the island of Guam. The home had a small extension in which an elderly couple rented for, in my opinion, way too much money. The move-in and setting up was uneventful, and things were okay until a couple of months had passed. The first indication that something was going on was when my girlfriend's son started having sleep trouble. He would wake up in the middle of the night screaming. When we would ask him what the problem was, he would say that there was little people that were in the backyard playing around the tree, and they wanted him to come join them. I dismissed this as a childhood dream and flight of fancy, and let it go at that. Within the next couple of days, he had the same dream, or so I thought it was, and I became concerned that the change in living between the old house and the new was affecting him in some way. In any case, I let him sleep in the living room from that time on for a very long time. He wouldn't hardly go in there, except to change his clothes. He seemed to be afraid of his bedroom. About a month later, we started hearing quite a lot of noise from his room, and it occurred almost exactly at 3:20 a.m. every morning. The first sounds were subtle, as opening and closing of doors, steadily increasing to heavy sounds of running. I could have explained these away as my imagination, but my girlfriend said she had heard the same sounds. I started to investigate the background of our modular home. I spoke with the elderly couple about what was going on, and they both said they had heard the same kind of noises even when the house was vacant. They said that the last tenant had only stayed for about 3 months and left suddenly in the middle of the night, never to come back. The owner of the modular had stated that it was used as a daycare center for many years, and it was closed down, due to what I don't know. In any case, I was in the house, and I wanted to stay, even with all the weird noises. So I decided to try to confront whatever was in the house. I waited until its usual time, 3:20 a.m., and the sounds started, as they had, consistently for a few months. I got up and I went to my son's room, and I had a word with the room. I had asked if whoever was there would show themselves, and was not successful in contacting anyone or anything. The sounds continued, but got progressively sooner and sooner in the evening. One night, we went to a dinner party and left one of my girlfriend's sisters to watch her son. When we arrived home, the front door was wide open, and she was sitting on the doorstep, just looking straight out. I asked her what had happened, and she said that things were being dropped all over the house. Plates, books, knickknacks. And we confirmed this by finding these items all over the house on the floor. Finally, things became less frequent and mellowed out quite a bit, until one evening, when we had let our guard down, we were fast asleep, and all of a sudden, I heard running on the rooftop, loud footsteps like a full-sized man. I could hear these clearly, since the roof of modular homes are tin. In any case, I went outside to take a look, and of course, there was nothing there. When I came back to bed, I felt a presence between my girlfriend and I. It was like a resistance that had a bad odor to it. My girlfriend and I both felt and smelt it. There was also a long, female-sounding sigh that occurred right when the resistance started. I did not know what it was, but it scared me. And it scared my girlfriend, and we both sat up and rode out the night sitting up, just staring at the wall. The occurrences were less and less after that time, and we really had a good time in the house. We became to feel there was somebody watching us and sharing our lives. We moved about 2 years later, and learned the new tenants had a really hard time with the house. The elderly lady that lived next door became really good friends with my girlfriend's mother, and they always talked. The new tenant had 2 teenage daughters that stayed in my girlfriend's son's room, and they always felt they were being watched through the windows. Maybe it was the same little people that my girlfriend's son used to see dancing around the tree. I now believe there are some things out there that we just can't explain. Story 2. The Basement. This happened in the mid-80s. Me, my sister, and my mother lived with my grandparents. We slept in the basement, and we shared a bunk bed. My mother slept on the bottom, and my sister and I slept on the top. This particular night, my mother had stayed the night over at her boyfriend's house, and I was awakened by the sound of my name. Someone was calling me. I looked up, and the entire basement looked as though it was daylight. I looked around, and I saw it. It was almost beautiful. A woman in a white flowing dress. It appeared to me that she was floating, with her white gown billowing in the air, but there was no breeze. Once I saw that, I instantly became terrified. I could only hide myself under the covers, wondering why this person would be in my basement, calling me, looking the way she did. I nudged my sister a few times, and asked her if she would look and see if she saw the thing, but she was in too deep a sleep. So I finally got up the nerve to pull the covers down off my face and see what it was, or where it was, or if it was gone, and thankfully it was gone. I jumped up out of the bed and turned on the light, and I headed upstairs. Once I got upstairs, I saw that my grandparents were up having breakfast. And guess what? It was pitch black outside. I couldn't believe it. I told my grandparents what had happened, and my grandfather showed me something in the paper about people having the exact same experience that I'd had, but it didn't make me feel any better. It just made me wonder why. Why did it have to happen to me? The thought of ghosts still give me the creepy crawlies. That has never changed. Story 3. Grandma. My grandmother was dying of colon cancer, and I was notified by my mother that doctors had given her only 2 days to live. I told my mom that since she had been with my grandma all day, that I would stay with her that night so that Mom could go home and get some much-needed rest. My grandma had been in a coma for a couple days, and her breathing was labored because her lungs were filling up with fluid. The nurse asked if I would like a cot to sleep on, since I had told them that I would be spending the night. But I told them that I would prefer just to sit beside my grandma. I was watching Johnny Carson, which came on at 10 p.m. Central Time, when my grandma reached over and grabbed my hand that I had laid beside her on the bed. She never moved anything else or muttered a single word. We sat there holding hands for an hour, and at exactly 11 p.m., she took a very deep and final breath. I was unable to sleep for some time, having had reoccurring dreams of her drowning. My grandfather was still alive, but unable to care for himself, and was placed in an elderly care facility. My mom toyed with the idea of renting out my grandma's house, or just selling it. I told my mom I was uncomfortable with the idea of someone else living in that house, since I had grown up there. We only lived approximately 1 mile away. It was agreed upon that I would move in with a roommate. 6 months passed before we were able to have an auction to liquidate as much as we could for funeral expenses, since we didn't sell the house. It was agreed that, instead of rent, I would fix up the house, and when I moved, the money from the sale would be used to cover expenses for my grandfather's funeral. The room I chose for my bedroom had been the guest room, since I wasn't ready to sleep in my grandma's room. Having taken care of her there while she was suffering from cancer, chemo, and radiation therapy, the memories were too awful. To continue, the room was directly across from the kitchen doorway. The kitchen was lit up by the blue glow of the clock on the microwave oven. I was sleeping soundly and rather peacefully when, for some odd reason, I was instantly awake. I sat up in bed and looked out the bedroom door into the kitchen, and I saw my grandmother at the counter, in one of her floral dresses and half aprons, making cookies like she always did when we were children. I sat and watched her for several minutes, and a very peaceful feeling came over me, as if she was telling me that she was glad I'd moved into her house, to take care of it as she had always done. She never turned around, just kept making cookies, and I went back to sleep. I have never seen my grandmother since then, and I have lived in her house for 10 years. until my son was 6 years old. Of course, my grandma didn't live to see my son, but I felt by living in her house, she was watching over us. I'm a single parent and could use all the help I can get. Things had become hectic with my other grandmother, and I moved closer to her, but still in the same town. We sold the house and saved the money as agreed upon to pay for my grandfather's funeral. He died exactly 10 years, 1 week after she did. We entered the hospital the same day that she had passed away. My mom and I chose the buyers carefully, financed the loan ourselves so that anything happened, the house before it was paid off, it would be returned to the family, and we could continue to take care of Grandma's house. It was not difficult to let go of the house, as if Grandma understood that I had been there for her and was now needed elsewhere. But I often remember my childhood there when I drive by, and memories of my grandma's last visit from beyond. I know she's at peace now, with my grandpa, and the new family will make memories in that house that was always accustomed to laughter and love. And maybe, just maybe, my grandparents will visit them, just to check in and provide them with comfort when they need it. Story 4. May's Husband. My parents and I moved from our hometown in Washington State all the way down to Orlando, Florida. But that didn't last very long, so we moved back to Washington State. My parents were in the process of buying a house from a friend. We'll call her May. She let us stay with her for a while. Her husband had just died, about 5 years before, so she lived alone in this very large, old, white house that took up the whole block. It was just me and my mom there. We were waiting for my dad to drive up with the U-Haul truck. We arrived on Friday, and that next Saturday, May left for a very short visit in Seattle. The following Sunday, my mother and I came home from visiting all of our friends. I ran upstairs to where me and Mom shared a room. We stayed in the blue room. I went to change into my pajamas when I heard something in the direction of the closet. I also felt like someone was watching me. I ran downstairs, yelling for my mom. I told her what I had just experienced and said, "There's someone upstairs in our room." She went upstairs to check, but there was no one up there. I always felt like someone was watching me in that house, and I couldn't wait until my parents got their own place. I wanted out of that house. Not until a year later, I found out the whole story. That Saturday morning, when May left for Seattle, my mom asked her if she could sleep in her bedroom while she was gone. May asked my mother why, and my mom said, "Because the bed upstairs in the blue room is too soft and hurts my back." And May said, "Are you sure that's the real reason?" And my mom said, "Of course. What are you talking about?" And May said, "Well, people don't like sleeping in the blue room because they say they feel someone watching them. Also, every picture that has been taken in that house has an orange fuzz somewhere in the picture, whether it's above you or off to the side or somewhere near you, but it's never covering you up. Now someone else lives in that house, and I often wonder if the new owners feel and see some of the same things that May and the rest of my family experienced. I really assume that it's May's husband's spirit still lingering in that house that he loved so much.